Welcome everybody to a new video. I have with me Jaakko Manninen, also known as Mellow-D, also known as MD, a legend in the demo scene, and also a legend in the Netlabel scene. Although he didn't release that much on the Netlabel, he was an instrumental figure in facilitating Netlabels becoming what they were. He was very active on the tracker music scene before the term Netlabel was coined. And today, as celebration for the Net Audio Day, 14th of July, I decided to do an interview with the grandfather of the of the tracker music scene. You were great. The tracker music already existed when you joined, right? You joined like in the early 90s, right?
Something like that. Yeah, like on the Amiga, like maybe even in the late 80s, but I think 1990, by 1990 I was definitely making sounds on the Amiga.
Okay, so name is Jaakko Manninen. What do you do for a living? Well, what are you working on nowadays?
I'm working at a CEO and founder of a gaming startup that's still under wraps. So
Okay, cool.
yeah, gaming stuff,
Okay.
as is to be expected from the demo scene.
Yeah, you were already involved in some other gaming companies before as well, I recall, and
Yeah.
also some VR stuff as well. You do a lot of different startup stuff. Um, so you were saying we were talking about in the beginning. So let's try to get your story from the right beginning. So when did you get your first computer? You said late 80s, early 90s was Amiga. Or did you do anything on like Commodore 64 stuff like that?
No, I had an Apple IIc, and then uh, I did some early coding on that, but nothing like demo scene stuff. I didn't really know about the demo scene until I got my Amiga. I kept asking for an Amiga, I think for maybe a couple of years or something like that, and I think I got it somewhere between 86 and 88. But yeah, I think 88 definitely. I was kind of, you know, aspiring to be in the demo scene somehow, and yeah.
How did you first came acquainted with the demo scene? The usual path, you saw some crack intros on some games and wondered what the hell the creative side was on that.
Yeah, I think somebody at school gave me some floppy disks, or the harder kind of floppy disk um, at school. So then I saw some crack throws or something like that, and it blew my mind. Like I was like, what the hell is this? And but yeah, then on all those floppies that I got from originally from school, but then I started mail swapping, and all this software kept coming in, and I kept trying everything. Like, you know, if it was a coding app, I'd try some coding. If it was Deluxe Paint, I would try some drawing, and made some very bad logos and things like these. But I learned to like do some shading patterns of like, this kind of 3D style kind of embossed logos, with,
Hmm.
and then I do side shadings and stuff like that. But yeah, really bad stuff. But then I think something like Pro Tracker or Noise Tracker came on one of those floppies, and yeah, that was kind of the one that took me, you know,
Did you have any musical training before that, or
not really. I had took some piano lessons and some guitar lessons, but yeah, not really.
you had the basics? You knew what a chord was, which was a lot more than I did when I started messing around with trackers.
Yeah, I
Um,
could make maybe one or two chords on the guitar or something like that. But yeah.
For those who don't know what tracker music is, can you explain why tracker music was important? Mostly, it was about size and the capability of running the sound on those things. Do you want to give it a go at explaining what the tracker format is?
Yeah, so I mean, as a kid, and we didn't have huge amounts of money to buy music gear, and it wasn't really an interest anyway. Like the Amiga 500 came along, and it had kind of everything from everything multimedia, if you will, and so it was just a super easy and super cheap way to try out different kinds of creative tools, and so trackers in particular were like, you didn't need any studio gear, and it came with the ST00 sample library. So on one disk you'd have the tracker software, which is notation tool for making music essentially, but then it also came with some samples that you could play around with. So kind of a really low barrier, although it's sort of very difficult to use, but still like a really low barrier of entry to be trying out music making at least. But then it with its limitations of like no effects and no sends, no mixing capabilities, and mono samples and all this kind of stuff. You could push it pretty far up to a certain point, I would say. The lack of effects was basically the limit. But
The Amiga mods have a very characteristic sound, like all the samples are so hard cut into things, and there's a special aesthetic also on the panning because it was limited to 4 channels. So they're always like, once you know about the limitations of the 4-channel mod, you start to recognize them immediately. Oh, this is a 4-channel mod. It looks like it's a specific weird sound, specific weird sample cuts. So yeah, and mostly I guess people also. Well, there was no replay routine. There was no MP3 format. You could have like long form samples, but they took a lot of space. So no one really rendered them to WAV unless you would be like having them for publishing, like official publishing for tapes or whatever. So that's why there was a lot of floppy trading, and those tracker formats fit into floppies. That was the most important thing, to be able to trade them around. What music trackers did you use the most?
I think Noise Tracker was probably on the Amiga, but then pretty quickly, reasonably quickly, I went to PC, kind of 93 or something like that, and 94 maybe. So then you could have much more channels on. Fast Tracker 2 is the one that I used the most by far, like over the years. But yeah,
you still remember the shortcuts of Fast Tracker 2?
Maybe.
Although
they may have been confused by Renoise use.
But they were quite similar to Renoise, or you could change the settings, I think, on Renoise to have shortcuts like FT2 or shortcuts like other trackers. So yeah, Fast Tracker 2 was your winner on the Fast Tracker versus Impulse Tracker war.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I did try Scream Tracker and did something in Scream Tracker and Impulse Tracker too, but yeah, Fast Tracker 2 was definitely the winner for me.
So how did you distribute your music early on? Because you were making you were making original music. Were you just distributing it on floppies via mail trading? Did you get into BBSs eventually?
So I think some early music discs may have been distributed by mail on floppies, but reasonably quickly it was already FTP, and internet became pretty widespread, like in Finland at least, around 93 or so. It was already very widely used, by me. BBSs, I did hang out on some BBSs, but I didn't really find any. I don't think I found any demoscene BBSs back in the day. So
wow, really?
For me, like I don't remember ever putting any mods on any BBS, but yeah.
Okay. I thought there was, maybe it's more Amiga thing to be on BBSs. I think on PC there was a lot of directly to the internet, or the internet popularized a lot more the PC scene. So we kind of forget about that BBS period of the PC scene. But that's the feeling I have. I would like to talk with a few more people about that to see the real historic value of the BBSs to develop the PC demo scene. Anyways, a lot of IRC. I remember you used to be a IRC regular and referencing DCC stuff, but you became popularized because you started having, well, you were part of different groups throughout the years, but the one that you made you more popular was Five Musicians. You were the founder of Five Musicians, correct?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it was like based on conversations on IRC with on hashtag or pound tracks with Necros and Basshead. I think we decided to just kind of form like a demo group, but only for music, and that was kind of a weird idea back then. That
those kind of groups already existed when you started Five Musicians, no? Those tracker music groups. Or were you one of the first tracker music groups
I
as
think
well?
we were one of the first ones. I think KMFDM was maybe the first one. At least it existed when we started. But yeah, it was. I remember it being a weird idea. Like, why would you do this? Not have any coders or graphics people.
On the United States, it sort of made sense because there were so many musicians based there and not that many demo scene coders. So it sort of made more sense, and also a lot of Asian art scene. And you were also relatively part of the United States scene. I remember you used to live there for a few years, something like that. So you kind of know some people from there as well, which is really cool. What was your first demo party? Do you remember?
I think it was The Gathering 1990, if I remember correctly.
It's a lifetime ago.
I went and I took my Amiga and my, big CRT monitor with me. And then I didn't have the balls or the guts to go say hello to Dr. Awesome.
And you regretted it ever since.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome. So you founded Five Musicians, and Five Musicians quickly became one of the most famous tracker music groups out there, like revered by a lot of other tracker groups, other trackers. Like it was the reference thing. If it was released on Five Musicians, it was usually a good release. What was the concept behind it? Was it more of a label or of a collective? Is the kind of question that I have here. Because nowadays it sort of mixes, but I think in the 90s, the idea of having a label was slightly different. So can you tell us a little bit about the thoughts that were into forming Five Musicians and why the limit to 5 musicians active at a time?
Yeah, it was totally arbitrary. There were 5 people in the beginning, and then the name kind of introduced that constraint that there should only be 5
Because
people.
you were only 4 in the beginning, so why didn't you call? Why weren't you called 4 musicians?
It also starts with an F, so. But yeah, there were actually some tracker labels already back then, like that were labels that would kind of release music from any number of artists. But yeah, that was our artificial constraint, and it was either 4 or 5 musicians at any time, kind of in the group.
For those who don't know the discography of Five Musicians, did you do a lot of collaborations, like remixing each other's work and stuff like that, or was it most original work?
It was mostly original work, but we did remix other people's stuff within the group and maybe outside the group as well. But yeah.
Okay, so why did you decide to create an FTP? Because back then in the 90s, having a host online was really costly. You needed a server, dedicated server with a fixed IP and all that kind of stuff. Disk space was a big issue. So how the hell did you had secret contacts, or was it just out of your pocket?
I was working at a Belgian ISP in Brussels at that time, and I had like a spare 486 machine that I installed Linux onto, and that was
Nice.
ftp.fm.org for like a couple of years or something. And
did they know about it, or was it like a stealth thing?
They did know about it, and it had a static IP that they had given me, and then I think I hosted it at Nokia for a brief time when I returned to Finland and worked for Nokia, and they had this IP laboratory there, and I could just host that machine there. And then but pretty quickly it was moved to where it is today, or it became scene.org, and it's now hosted by some university in the Netherlands.
In Rotterdam, I believe.
Yeah.
That was another point that I wanted to ask you. When did you go from let's just host hard releases to let's host everything from the demo scene that we ever think of? Like that's a huge, just in terms of disk space capacity, it's already like a huge distinction and a huge investment. So where did that idea come from?
Yeah. So originally we wanted to have one place to put all the stuff that we were, sending each other via DCC over IRC. So like direct transfers to each other. And so that's why we originally set it up. And yeah, I guess then pretty quickly realized that the demo scene at large doesn't have a place like that.
It did have Hornet at the
Yeah,
point
there
at
was
the
the
time.
Hornet archive. The Hornet archive was up, but
I think it closed down around 98, and scene.org kick-started around 97 or 96, something like that. Or maybe it was 5 musicians. Because we tried to check the logistics of this, the dates of this, to remember the dates of this before the interview, and we already forget. Let me quick check the chat that we did.
I think, well,
fm.org was first registered in 96. And scene.org was registered in 97. We're talking about the domains here. So 97, you already started migrating into scene.org, I guess.
Yeah, that whole, so I guess it was also partly like, let's give this space to other groups as well, and might as well just, include the demo scene at large. That's kind of how it happened. And it wasn't meant to compete with Hornet Archive, and we didn't have like a main differentiator or anything like that. It was just like, it just kind of happened that let's just open this up to other people, because I think there was some interest towards that or something like that. I mean, it's almost 30 years ago now, so it's
don't really
hard to recall all the details, but yeah, it definitely wasn't meant to compete with Hornet Archive. But then suddenly Hornet Archive decided to, stop that, the archive, and then scene.org, I guess, became the only one, or at least
the main one. Yeah, there were a few mirrors, I guess, but it became the main incoming place that you would upload the new releases.
Yeah.
Do you remember if in the beginning you had more tracker music related stuff, or did you go directly into demo scene because you had demo scene at its core?
I think it was definitely more towards tracker stuff in the beginning. That was I think the pub music / music folder was definitely the most time consuming one to. So for the admins to filter out what's coming in, the music area was the most happening one, I think.
Yeah. I was a staff member of scene.org, as you know, but for the people out there that don't know, and I think you were already not very active on scene.org when I joined, so this was around 2002, something like that. And when I joined, one of my main roles was going through the incoming applications folder, because we didn't have enough space to host everything, and we had to have a certain degree of quality of some sort. Let's not waste our space hosting stuff that's just junk. So one of my roles was actually going through all of the different music applications and listen to the stuff, and like, if it's demo scene related, it's automatically approved. If it's not demo scene related, the quality needs to be good enough that makes sense to give this space. And at this point, it was particularly a problem because MP3 started becoming a thing around 98, 99. MP3 format started booming. The internet started becoming faster for everyone, so everybody was into MP3s. mp3.com website was up. How did you see this transition between the tracker formats to the MP3 formats?
Yeah, I basically pretty much embraced it. I was still making everything in trackers. Well, to this date, I guess I'm still using Renoise, but not exclusively. But like, yeah, the MP3 kind of offered us a way out of the tracker in a way, or out of the demo scene or the scene. the tracker scene. So it was really the kind of the first time that we could, make tracker music and publish it to the broader audience. And yeah, I think me and my friends, I would say, pretty much embraced it and started making MP3s as much as we could. I made since then I made all of my music disc thingies as MP3s as well. So I would release them as XMs, which are Fast Tracker 2 modules, and then as MP3s.
Mm-hmm. Did you usually remaster them? Did you have any? I know you're good at producing and mastering now, but were you any good back then?
I'm still not good at mastering. That's it's definitely its own art, but I would just master them myself with a limiter and compressor and think I would be done. But looking back nowadays, all of the mastering is it's really low volume and it's not professionally done. There's definitely a difference to.
I thought low volume is good. It has more room to breathe. You're not fighting the loudness wars. You're doing a lot of IDMs. Was the genre that you were mostly doing yourself, and you started releasing commercially through Merc Records as well. And Nate was also related to the demo scene at one point or another. Never released anything in the demo scene, but he was in our group chat on Palm, and he knew about the demo scene activities and stuff. These were the heydays of IDM music, late 90s. War popularized it a lot. Reflex and Scam were also very hype and focused. Aphex Twin, Autek, and that kind of stuff. So there was this big boom in IDM music, and we had a lot of musicians in the demo scene that were doing IDM music. Yourself, Broadom States, Lackluster, Crankshaft. We had a lot of top tier, high quality demo scene legends hanging around on the Palm channel doing IDM music. Was very inspiring for me as a starting musician back then.
Me too.
Get a slap of all that world. How was the transition to the more professional music making world? Did you see it as a hobby still? Was it just let's try this because I have music that people want to listen to? Can you tell us a little bit about that transition?
Yeah, I think it was kind of originally kind of just another outlet. It was cool to actually, for the first time,
a physical thing.
Exactly, get a physical thing released and then distributed, and even Gabe from Merc did pretty good promotion on the title. So some of the releases on Merc did fantastically well, and Merc is today still, I think, regarded quite well as an IDM label. So that was fun, of course, but I didn't really see this like a career change or a career career change or a career. It was always a hobby for me, but there was a time around then that I thought could this be done professionally? But I'm sort of glad it didn't pan out. I'm glad I'm not a professional musician, because it's quite, the music industry is pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
It remained as a hobby for me until I still have a studio, but I haven't been really using it lately. But anyway, I digress.
But you always kept still doing music, right, throughout the years, now and again.
Kind of less and less, but I'm still, next 3 weeks I'm gonna dedicate to music. So I have 3 weeks off. I'm gonna go to the cottage, take all my gear, and try to.
You have a lot of gear, like physical stuff, besides the computer?
I have too much. Yes, I have 3 rows of modular synths. Oh wait, 4. Not very wide rows of modular synths, and some Electron gear. I like the Electron stuff because of the overbridge thing. I can bring them in as VSTs straight into the DAW, which is really nice. And then, the recall is perfect. So if I save it, it's and load it back, it's just like it was, which is different to MIDI. I mean, always had problems with MIDI recall. The presets wouldn't be saved correctly or wouldn't load correctly, or I would overwrite something. And yeah, it's pretty. I really like the Electron overbridge setup nowadays.
Yeah.
It works with Renoise really nicely.
Do you still use Tracker a lot, or have you moved to another DAW?
I haven't really found like the best DAW, so I did try it with Logic, and did make some releases with Logic, and then I've been using Ableton Live now and then, but I haven't made releases with that. For some reason, Live doesn't really work somehow for me. I'm not sure why, but yeah, Renoise, Renoise, I can always get something done in. But
Okay.
But yeah, I haven't made anything finished for quite a while.
Okay. So you're one of those that are accumulating unfinished tracks for one day to do an album out of. Let's go back to the booming of Netlabel. So we were talking about scene.org, and now scene.org became the main place where people could upload stuff, and it was free. So hosting became sort of free. MP3 format started booming, and suddenly there was this near zero barrier to producing and releasing music, and that's when the coin netaudio became a thing. It was coined like the music that is free for download. It's called netaudio because it's music that comes from the internet.
From bedroom producers. So
yeah, and you were one of the people who like enabled that explosion to happen with scene.org, mostly since you were behind scene.org. Then there were another website that played a major role, which was archive.org as well. That was also the Netlabel being a part of archive.org, or the Netlabel archives becoming part of archive.org, was also pushed by someone active in the Netlabel scene, Hall of Mono 211, which is also a very famous Netlabel. My question is, how did you end up, not really exploring it to the fullest? Because you put some releases free for download still on 99, and then you just sort of diverged into trying the indie market, can we call it that, of physical distribution, and you didn't really ride the wave of the netaudio stuff. Do you have any, were you just busy with other stuff, or what can you tell us about that?
I guess I was just busy with other stuff. Like around 2000 I moved to London, and I guess that was, I started making physical releases. There were actually a few physical releases that I didn't release as on digital, as we say nowadays, at all. So for some reason, I guess maybe I grew out of it in a way. I'm not sure why I didn't ride the Netlabel wave.
Were you into Creative Commons at all? Do you remember like the boom? Because for us, we're in the demo scene when Creative Commons started becoming a thing, and all the bands were like, "Oh, we adopt Creative Commons." Like, dude, we've been doing that for like years. What are you talking about? That's how music on the internet operates. We share and we do each other's work and we release the stuff. So, did you follow the Creative Commons thing at all? Do you have any thoughts on it?
Not really. I mean, I don't really have any thoughts on it, and I didn't really follow it very much. I mean,
okay, fair enough. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was the impact of the internet on making music and sharing music. Because for me, the internet really opened up ways for people to share their work, find other people who do the same kind of music. A lot of niche experimental music genre for me was one of the most things, because I didn't know other people were doing my kind of music. And that kind of bloomed in the early 2000s because of the popularity of the internet and the near zero cost of distribution of the Netlabel scene as well. A lot of home producers, bedroom producers started releasing stuff. Websites like Napster, Soulseek, mp3.com, MySpace, Last.fm. this felt to me like it widened up a lot of the music culture that exists. We stopped, and Netlabel sort of was called like the democratization of the music industry, because it opened up for things to be exposed to the public instead of being behind this wall of curators that will only put you out if you are guaranteed to sell something.
Mm.
So did you feel this with the internet? Do you think we have a wider music culture nowadays than we had in the 90s, for example?
Yeah, I do like, and then there's been tools like Ableton Live that make it, progressively easier and easier and easier. And, the growth of CPU power has enabled like awesome VSTs that, yeah, I think all music is now made on the computer I'm pretty sure like any genre is now being made on the computer.
Recorded directly into the computer and manipulated in some way, or at least
Yeah,
mastered.
yeah, mixed and mastered on the computer. But then there's like then the streaming platforms have kind of eroded that a little bit more. So now that there's no physical releases and with streaming basically ubiquitous, the revenue model has for professional artists has all but vanished. Yeah.
Yeah, they make more out of licensing stuff than actually putting their music up on Spotify.
Yeah, live gigs and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I think I still think it's a good development. I mean, I was working on something like Spotify in the early days, maybe 20 years ago or something like that. But yeah, Spotify is it's good and bad in a way.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays we sort of we the consumers assume that we have that we can listen to the digital before. And if there's a new release coming out, you know that the video will be up on YouTube, you know that the track will be available on Spotify, and
Yeah.
you probably will be able to buy it on Bandcamp if you want to really support the artist, for 80% instead of the 20% they usually get.
Right.
And then the idea or the business model sort of changed into, and then if you really like the artist, you support them on Bandcamp or through their website directly, where before it used to be, you would go to the record store and buy their records, or you would go to their gigs where they show up. So it became a lot more digital, in a way, very digital focus, even before the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But nowadays anybody can pick up Ableton Live and start making sounds, so that's definitely a good thing.
Is it good? We're really flooded with new music, though. It becomes harder and harder, to find the hidden gems.
Yeah, and
Oh,
it's harder and harder to kind of stand out from the flood of music
mhm.
that's being released. But still, like if you enjoy making music, then that's at least very much feasible by anybody with a computer these days. So that's a good thing, I guess. But yeah, standing out from the crowd is increasingly difficult.
Yeah. Um, More questions that I have here for you. We talked about the streaming stuff as well. We under Tipalm also organized some stuff. Well, you more than me. I just helped participating in it a couple of times. We organized the Lazy Sunday Radio. Remember doing that? This was before they had Twitch. This was before they had, online radios. And we were already streaming live pirate radio. Well, it wasn't pirate because it was mostly original material, although we did have some DJ sets, which included whatever the hell we wanted to have. So, how does it feel to having been a pioneer on so many different little things that now are just commonplace, and you're like a silent pioneer because no one associates Jaakko Manninen with the person who popularized net audio, the person who broke some ground for online streaming. Does it just feel weird? Do you have any regrets that you could have maybe in a way explored it a bit more?
I guess from Lazy Sunday Radio and especially Lazy Sunday Video, that could have become something like Twitch. We used a platform called Ustream for a little while there. So first we had our own servers using Icecast, and then we started doing video with Icecast, and then video with Ustream, and then if we were to do Lazy Sunday video now, we'd definitely do it on Twitch, right? So this could have been maybe turned into a business, but it's kind of demoscene, us doing just fun stuff for ourselves. So with whatever technologies are available to us, and it was just fun setting up all the server stuff, and that's kind of what I was into in that around then. Like anything internet was just and on the backend side especially, it was like super interesting to me. And that goes from all the way from fm.org all the way to Lazy Sunday video. It's just fun.
I remember we spent like weeks trying to get the server working properly, and then we would do like a pre-party, which was just testing the server pretty much.
Yeah.
And then it would be the actual event, and then we would have sometimes a post-party, like another extra day, because we were still so hyped from the actual event, and we didn't even announce that the post-party was just still streaming on the server because someone had more stuff to share.
Yeah,
it felt like a lot more work to set up than the actual thing happening.
Yeah.
But it was really fun. It was a lot of fun.
The most of the work was getting the lineup in order for the main kind of day, and then getting all the people tested. Person A is streaming from West Coast US, streaming audio, and then somebody from I don't know opposite side of the globe, really from Australia, could be sending the video and like the video stream with the audio in it. And getting all those kind of combinations tested was a lot of work, and getting the lineup, just getting the people in was the lion's share of the work. But then once the main event was over, sometimes it kept going for a couple of days or 3 days even in some cases. So that was a lot of fun. Like it was
really cool. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, we saw a lot of uprising of people doing online streams and stuff again. Do you think it's something that was just a necessary evil, or does it have a future in terms of entertainment? Because it is more convenient for some people. I mean, you don't have to leave home to go to the club. You can see it at home, but it also, detracts. You don't have the connection. The DJ doesn't have the connection with the crowd directly. So how did you feel about those online streaming things? Do you hate them, or do you think they're okay?
I think they're great. Especially it makes it more accessible for anybody. Somebody might not be able to leave home and can still tune into this gig. So I think it's a good development, for sure.
Yeah. Another topic that I wanted to talk with you about is about this new trend in music that I've seen happening or popping up a lot. Like there are some channels that are created just for curating a certain aesthetic and sound, which used to be what labels sort of did, like have a certain aesthetic line. And nowadays, there are these abstract channels like on YouTube just streaming all the time mixtapes from random artists that just submitted their tracks there in that specific style. And it feels like there's a whole thing like of different very niche genres that are like completely obscuring the artists that actually do the stuff. And it, on one hand, is fascinating. On the other hand, my bell is ringing, so I have to pick that up. So hold the thought.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, mailman. What was I saying? Fascinating that these kind of new channels exploit these kind of micro genres. I call them micro genres because it's not a niche anymore. It's like so specific, like vaporware, but not this kind of vaporware. It's specific vaporware just for this kind of sampling of this specific thing in this specific aesthetic vein. And there are like hundreds of these kind of channels, and it's insane. It's interesting at one end, but at the other end, it feels like it's completely just consumer, easy consumption sort of thing, like fast consumption.
Yeah,
Do you have any thoughts on this new uprising? I call it an uprising because I've been seeing a lot of them popping up on the last few years.
it's actually pretty new to me. I haven't really seen much of that. I've seen some, what's it called, like what's it called, low end hip hop. It's not called low end.
Lo-fi?
Lo-fi hip hop. Thank you. But yeah, there's like a lot of lo-fi hip hop channels on YouTube.
Yeah,
But
lo-fi and vaporware was what started this trend, I feel.
yeah,
And then and like lo-fi trap music sort of thing, like music to relax. And then they noticed that it makes sense, and it started booming for a lot of other niche. Like there's some channels just dedicating to making vaporwave sounds feeling like Blade Runner aesthetics, like
yeah.
cyberpunk Blade Runner.
I'd imagine something like this is the channel for that genre with that one snare sample that's always the same in every track.
Some
But
very weird stuff, and like post-Soviet shoegaze music. Like it's like very depressive, and there are like website channels just dedicated to that. It feels so weird. It feels so strange. Like how can a person just consume uh, only one genre? For me, that feels completely insane. But some people, I know some people that are into that. Like they only do, industrial music, and they don't do like uh, electronic industrial music. They only do the old school industrial music.
yeah,
If it's a little bit psychedelic, they don't like it. They like the old
mm,
school industrial music only. And that for me was already very puzzling. Or people who only like rock and roll, but they don't like metal because rock and roll is where it's true, and I only listen to rock and roll.
open
For
your
me, that
mind.
was all. Yeah, open your mind. Like music has such diversity. Why are you trying to box yourself in? And it also seems to play to the strengths of the algorithm thing. Like YouTube expects you to do just this very specific niche of thing,
Yeah.
and it will help you announce more if you stick to that thing, and people will reward you with subscribes. But for me, it always feels like a bit anti-human. Like it's not human to just do one single thing all the time. You should be exploring stuff. Is it me? Is it us as musicians, as the Palm community people who are more open-minded to different kind of genres, or
I think it's probably a way like for musicians to do, whatever genre they want, but then this track might fit this particular channel there. But I'm not sure what the revenue model is because the channel is making revenue, but the
yeah, they
artist,
usually have a Patreon account, so where people can donate. So it's like the DJ and VJ that gets the money, not the artist.
exactly, yeah, and the artist name is obscured and nobody knows who made this track, and that sounds kind of weird to me, maybe.
I know a few producers who do like different kind of, they ride the waves of what is hype, and it's sort of normal. I mean, I've seen a lot of people who used to do even metal and some dubstep and different electronics now suddenly have a synthwave project because synthwave is hip. And I can understand from the artistic creation sort of view, like that you want to explore that genre. You did a couple tracks that sound good, so why not? Maybe
And
it'll
it was
get
fun to
popular.
make.
Maybe people will like it, so throw it out there and see what works.
Yeah,
So I met a few producers like this. They have like 4, 5, 6 different projects going at the same time. They'll launch one, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, then they focus on the other one. Maybe play 1 gig or 2 gigs live. If someone wants to book them on the other side of the world, they'll say yes. Otherwise, the project is pretty much dead.
yeah.
um, and I can understand why they explore that, but I don't know. As a consumer, it feels a bit weird. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, a lot of artists have definitely like multiple aliases and multiple projects going on, and it's really fun to experiment with like musical styles, and it's really hard to nail some musical styles. It's like, oh, I didn't get this sound quite right, and so yeah, you make 20 tracks until you start kind of getting it right, maybe. So it's fun, and sometimes like different styles could be much more fun than others to make songs in. Like yeah, just something like four on the floor stuff. Keep it simple. It's super fun to make.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, I'm all for it if they have, you know, an outlet, and maybe especially in like this case in particular, somebody's making money, so should the artist, and that's
Yeah.
fine by me. But if they're not getting any money, then they're being ripped off, and that's not cool.
Yeah. I mean, most of it depends on the artist. Some artists are fine with just, I made this track, I'll send it. If people listen to it, it's great. And I'll have my Bandcamp. If someone wants to support me, they'll go to my Bandcamp and pay for it.
Yeah.
You still been active on the music scene now and again. I remember you had your own label putting out vinyl as well. Was it called Teeth was the artist? What was the name of the label?
Signal Life.
Techno Life, yeah.
Signal Life.
So how do
Signal Life.
you are you still active on like music business side of things, or are you just mostly a hobby musician nowadays?
I'm just a hobby musician, and maybe at this you know last couple of years it's been like maybe 1 week a year that I've been making music, so it's been really busy with other stuff. But yeah, Signal Life is still going, but it's now operated completely by Desto. So we kind of put it in the hands of Desto because he's the active one. So yeah, that's a good label though. It's releasing lots of really good electronic music.
Okay, cool. Okay, I think I'm out of questions for the stuff. Is there any thoughts you would like to say, or any, I don't know, inspiration words for people out there? I do have one last question for you, which is, do you still see a role for label and curating for artistic releases, or can we go directly indie? I mean, an indie artist nowadays can put this stuff directly on Bandcamp. It can, take care of its own social network. It can put it up on Spotify. It can talk with the promoters to get their own gigs. They don't really need a label anymore. Even in terms of indie labels that do physical prints, it's also very easy to do your own prints nowadays. So is this still a role for the label thing, or is the world diluting into either it's a big label or you're an indie?
I think there is. I used to think there wasn't. So when I was making that version of Spotify before Spotify, I thought that artists would just put their stuff directly on there without any middlemen. But then a few years later, I've come to think that the labels offer and can offer, like, for those who aren't super actively following everybody in the music scene, especially now with more and more music being released, the labels definitely offer like a nicely curated set of this kind of stuff for you. And so, yeah, I definitely think there's something for the labels to offer in that way. Like it's kind of the brand, and under this brand, there's this kind of music. But having said that, there's also definitely, with Spotify, I mean, there are different services for you to get your music onto Spotify, for example, and then Bandcamp and others, that there's also not necessarily a need for a label to get started. But if you're making music and looking to kind of break, I don't know how that happens in this world anymore. I really don't. Maybe TikTok or something, but for me, I'm just kind of nowadays I'm just messing around with music gear and maybe putting something out there eventually, but I'm definitely not going to expect any financial returns from it in this music industry with everybody, kind of everything, but like post Napster music industry, like where everything is expected to be free, and like you said, everything is on YouTube for free and this kind of thing. So unless you're ready to kind of go to the gig circuit hard, and the licensing thing, of course, but yeah, unless you're ready to go travel and play a lot of gigs, then yeah. Yeah,
it's complicated.
It's very complicated. So I guess, but if you're having fun making music, then by all means, like, push hard.
I think most musicians that release stuff also have a side job. Even people who do like tours and stuff. Like you need to be really big musician to be full-time dedicated musician.
Absolutely.
Uh, some even do like scores for movies and stuff like that as their full-time job, their professional job, and then do a new album and tour the album as a side thing. So it's been weird.
Yeah, there are sites for doing that as well. Like I believe you can, post your music onto the site and get them to be, used in films and stuff like that. So
yeah, that do handle the licensing for you. Synced is one of the ones that I've been using for that. It's associated with Rootnote, which is the distributor that we use at Enough Records to put our stuff on the commercial labels, on the commercial platforms. So that's the one we have more experience with. Well, the only one I have any experience with. So yeah, there are some projects for that. Not just music, but also samples as well. Like if you want to put your samples up, there are some websites that you can upload them, and if people use them, you'll get like a few cents with automatic licensing for them to use it in whatever they want. If you have a massive samples of your own, that's a really cool thing that you can try to explore as a professional musician. But I think it's more of a side result of you doing already your own music. You have these leftovers, you can spend like a week fine-tuning them, uploading them somewhere, and maybe you'll get some extra money out of that. It's not something that you can dedicate yourself full towards. Any last words of advice for people, putting music free for download out there, running the Netlabel? Netlabel is not a hype anymore. It's sort of booming down because the indie market, like the Bandcamp of things and SoundCloud of things, made it so easy for indies to do it that the Netlabel format kind of diluted itself into the indie format. Most indie labels nowadays already have stuff on Bandcamp available free for you to listen at the very least. So Netlabel as a concept has been a bit diluted. But yeah, do you have any advice for new starting musicians? Just have fun with it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so out of the game now that I don't really know. But yeah, I mean, just have fun, I guess, is a pretty good thing. But yeah, maybe don't buy all the gear that you want outright.
Yeah, try to get the most out of what you already have
Exactly.
until
Yeah,
you
and
really feel the need to get something more.
setting constraints and working within those constraints is probably the most like powerful inspiration tool that I found. Like that's really worked in the trackers that you couldn't do everything. You couldn't have all these effects, so you had to, if you wanted reverb, then you had to put it in the sample and these kinds of things. So yeah. Yeah, and then it's more about like iterating on the styles and getting the style feel right than buying yet another piece of kit. I mean, I'm really guilty of this stuff. That's why I have too much gear. But yeah, I'm not going to buy anymore.
Okay, thank you so much for your time, Jaakko. It was a pleasure interviewing you. Any last thoughts and ideas that you would like to share?
No, I guess that was it.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye bye. Take care.
Thanks for having me. Bye bye.